Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. Election day, the morning after, the Big Apple has a Democratic Socialist mayor-elect.
New York, tonight you have delivered a mandate for change.
What an off year can tell us about national politics.
Fascinating to see what took place. Democrats notching some key wins.
What it means for the man not on any ballot, President Donald Trump.
This was a pass-fail test, though. They passed.
And how new leadership impacts a certain group of voters. New York's richest residents. We'll catch up with CNBC's wealth editor, Robert Frank.
If you have one person who makes $1 million leave, you have to have 10 people who make $100,000 replace that person.
On the other side of the Democrats' 2025 victories, a MAGA donor and tech investor, Chris Buskirk. He's close to Vice President J.D. Vance, and he weighs in on the political skill of New York's Zohran Mamdani.
Is openly embracing Marxism, and while that might work in Manhattan, I'm not so sure that that works in Michigan or Wisconsin or Arizona.
Plus, the looming Supreme Court showdown over whether the president can use emergency powers to enact tariffs. Oral arguments are today. Our Eamon Javers in Washington on the business response.
Yeah, I think you're seeing a decision by big companies that confronting this administration is not a good use of their resources.
It is Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Becky Quick along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant. So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us.
And of course, Andrew, we are thinking through everything we saw with the Election Day results.
Let's get everybody up to speed. It was a remarkable evening. Fascinating to see what took place. Democrats notching some key wins on Election Day. Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani is elected mayor of New York. He defeated independent Andrew Cuomo with about 90% of the expected votes in. Mamdani has more than 50% to Cuomo's roughly 42%. And even if you were to factor in the Sliwa vote, it looks like Zohran Mamdani would have still won.
This was a tough fight, and this is a tough state. But I know you, New Jersey, and I love you.
Democratic Representative Mikey Sherrill elected New Jersey's next governor, beating Republican Jack Ciattarelli. In Virginia, you had former Democratic Representative Abigail Spanberger set to become the state's first female governor, defeating the state's Republican lieutenant governor.
We sent a message to the whole world that in 2025, Virginia chose pragmatism over partisanship.
In a post on Truth Social, President Trump said that Republicans lost yesterday because he wasn't on the ballot and because of the ongoing government shutdown. I don't know what your reaction to all of this is. I'm fascinated by just how big the win was for Zohran Mamdani. I thought it would be closer. I'm fascinated by some of the poly market results in terms of how frankly close these elections were, but how the poly market wasn't close. I don't know what that says about anything. And I also now wonder what this means for the Democratic Party and whether this is going to be considered. We didn't talk about California, by the way, as well, in terms of what happened there.
In California pretty strongly, too, by better than 60% on the ballot. Look, this was a pass-fail test, though. They passed because these were all Democratic strongholds where these things happened. This was the anticipated result, so there weren't any upsets. Democrats passed the pass-fail test in this situation. I do wonder what it means for next year with the midterms and which route the Democratic Party is going to take in terms of whether they're going to follow the far left progressive wing or try and follow a more moderate centrist attack when it comes to how they handle national elections.
Midterms are always bad.
Yeah.
Just, is it going to be worse than normal or not? I thought Poly Market was incredibly good. I mean, it was 90-10. It was never got anywhere except 90-10 from him. There never was any question that he was going to win. And it never got more than 90-10. And maybe it was 84-15 in New Jersey for a little while. But there was never any waffling. I mean, I didn't wait up for any of this. And, in my son was like, what he was worried about was down in Virginia and that guy with the tweets about killing, someone's family. And he won too. I think it's a little weird, Andrew, because, I saw some takes on CNN and David Axelrod. And so they were giddy and gloating. And it's just weird that, they know better than to think that this is a great outcome in New York City and for the Democratic Party to move that far left. But anything that repudiates Trump, it's like an enemy of my enemy. It's like they'll ride whatever horse they can that repudiates Trump, including a Democratic socialist. And if you sleep with the
Joe, look, I'm not disputing that. My view, I don't like the extreme sides of either party. I'd much prefer something in the middle. But the truth is, I think there's a lot of people. It's actually kind of like the question that Norah O'Donnell asked the president, which is to say that, she said to him about Zohran Mamdani, is he the left version of you? There were a lot of people in the Republican Party that did not want President Trump ultimately to win either, but ultimately fell in line in the same way and have continued to support him. And so we have this sort of unique moment in our country where I think there's people on both sides who think both sides are, to some extent, extreme. I know you don't think that that's the case with
I
with
think
the
of it in a different way.
I
don't. The litmus test for me is communism and socialism and big government and free things and
He's populist, and populism has run rampant for.
Well, there's a populist. We're going to have the one of the founders of Aristo-populism is going to be on later today, Chris Buskirk, who's with Omid Malik in 1789, and we'll talk all about that. I mean, it's weird to let them eat cake, Aristo-populism, Warren Cass, people like that, to where billionaires can try, to help people that need help. But I always come back to, I've seen progressive try to help the people that they want to help. The policies never work. They never work. They never, ever work. And the people they're trying to help end up worse off. So it's how you approach things. Andrew, small government, maximum freedom, low taxation, private sector builds wealth and builds prosperity. So I don't see how Trump and Mamdani, you can say them in the same sentence, but that's it doesn't, the comparisons don't hold, except that Democrats think Trump, or the left thinks Trump is extreme. Yeah, he's extreme, and there's tariffs and there's things like that, but at least he's, deep down, believes in capitalism and believes in the private sector, hopefully. Believes in the private sector so much that the government's investing in the private sector.
There are big questions about how Wall Street's going to react to this, how business in general.
We had 12 years of.
We had more than 50% increase in business taxes.
We had a disaster we had the blah 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 for 8 years, and then Eric Adams for 4. The city's fine. So
I wonder how divided the city's going to become as a result of all this, and that's what I'm concerned about. Both the divide that I think is going to exist in the city. Frankly, I think the divide that's going to get even wider just in the country writ large. And for the city, I live in New York City. I worry about, we keep talking about whether billionaires are going to leave the city. I worry more about whether businesses are going to leave the city if, in fact, the mayor is able to, increase corporate taxes. Forget about wealth taxes. Corporate taxes unto itself, given how high those are ultimately going to go, could create a real issue in the city. And I'm not even sure he has to be able to enact them unto itself, meaning even if he's unable to do it, even just talking about it as an idea, as something that he's trying to pursue, I think will scare off companies that were ever considering moving to New York, and will scare off companies that are maybe in New York considering whether to move or whether to move more employees to other places. And that, I think, is actually going to be a real issue.
Well, I think Chuck Schumer's great fear and trepidation about a primary from the left from AOC, it's going to happen. And the whole, government shutdown, everything else that Republicans say, that's why he He needed to do that. I think it's going to be a Senate or AOC. So
I do wonder if this
so
makes
get
the
ready for
government
that
shutdown
too.
much worse. The government shutdown, because the Democrats will look at last night's results and say, "Hey, we don't need to fold or cave anytime soon."
That they're gonna. It's going to be.
Hopefully
this,
it happens.
It's going to be this week.
Hopefully it happens this week.
But I don't think
I did
this.
hear there were about 12 senators who were.
Yeah, I don't think this had anything to do with the shutdown. Look. What is the base level of people that just think Donald Trump is the worst president ever? That's 30%. Then I've said this before. Then you add in, people that like free stuff and want health care that doesn't cost a lot, would like the government to pay for it. You got another 20 there, so you're at the majority already at 50%. So none of this is surprising.
There's some crossover in those two circles.
Yeah.
Here's something I was thinking about this morning, guys.
This is your problem, Andrew.
After President Trump won,
it's your problem. I'm glad I go. I got my own problems out there with Mikey Sherrill.
After President Trump won, I think we all said, you know what, we're Americans. Let's give him a chance to do it.
Is that what you said? I don't remember you.
No. That's
the
what
first time
I
too,
that.
right?
I said
the
that.
first
Joe.
time, did you? Yeah, all the Democrats did, and the first time too. As they were conjuring up
great success. I do.
As they were conjuring up the whole Mueller probe, they were saying, give him a chance. Yeah.
And
as Democrats were saying, hey, let's give this guy a chance.
As a New Yorker, Joe, as a New Yorker, I woke up this morning and I said to myself, you know what? I don't agree with everything this mayor or
you want him on the show.
Well, now he's going to be our mayor. Says or plans to do, but I want to give him a chance, and I hope, for the sake of the city, he's able to.
Well, you
do
wouldn't even
good
say you
things
weren't
for the city.
You wouldn't even say you weren't voting for
him. Excuse me?
You wouldn't even acknowledge that you weren't going to vote for Mamdani. So so you got that. You can tell him, hey, I didn't even say I wouldn't vote for you. So he'll come on the show. We can talk to him, and he can tell us how everything's going to be free and it's going to be great.
Look, the truth is that as a journalist, I think it's not my role, and not even my role. I actually think I cannot tell you who I'm voting for. You may disagree. You have a different position on that, but I think it's better not to. Not only better not to, I think it might even be a policy.
Okay. I mean, you can't give money, but I think you can make it clear of things that you disagree with, or else I don't even know what you are. If you can't, if you don't have that's your thing. Good. Stick with it. The current government shutdown is now the longest on record. Emily Wilkins joins us now with more. Emily, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Well, yeah, as you guys are discussing, Democrats are feeling good after their decisive wins last night in Virginia and New Jersey's governor's races. And that could translate to Senate Democrats feeling comfortable enough to continue to hold out on reopening the government until they get an agreement on health care. Now, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, Kristen Gillibrand, she's leading the Senate Democrats campaign arm. They did say in a statement last night that these victories show continued momentum for Democrats and represent a growing midterm backlash against Republicans who have fallen in line behind Trump's chaos and dysfunction. And in 2026, voters will hold GOP Senate candidates accountable. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy also tweeted that maybe the take is that A, this is his tweet, A, people think Trump is out of control, and B, people like when Dems were taking a stand and fighting for what we believe in as we have been in for the last month. So that was Chris Murphy on Twitter. Meanwhile, Trump took to Truth Social last night, partially blaming the shutdown for the election's result. He posted that Trump wasn't on the ballot and shutdown were the two reasons that Republicans lost elections last night, according to pollsters. That was Trump's tweet there. It remains to be seen, really, if the results are going to have any impact on the stalemate in Congress. Of course, this week you've seen a group of senators. They appear to be getting closer to a deal that would fund some key areas of the government for the next fiscal year. But some Democrats, they do still want to hold out for a firmer agreement on healthcare tax credits. And it's going to remain to be seen exactly if some of them want to cross the aisle, if some of them remain firm in their position. Meanwhile, we're also keeping an eye on GOP senators. They're headed to a breakfast at the White House this morning, and we'll, of course, be keeping a close eye on what message Trump will have for them. He did tweet again last night about ending the filibuster, which so far Republicans have remained pretty firmly opposed to. Joe?
All right. I'm not sure it's just a pass-fail. Becky was talking about that, but there are two blue states that they were flukes last time with and California too,
and New York City. Is it a surprise?
I still think,
Democrat won New York City.
I'm going to say if you sleep with the devil, but the Attorney General in Virginia, okay, you want to elect that guy, that's fine. You want to elect Mamdani in New York? Okay, that's fine. But for New Jersey, uphill battle all along for Cettarelli. And all along, it was, Trump says he wasn't on the ballot. Well, you kind of were on the ballot in New Jersey, and you were on the ballot in Virginia. And they're both blue. They both start pretty darn blue. Yeah. And, that until the midterms come along, that's the way that voters are able to vote we know how much Democrats don't like what's going on and what happened in the last major election.
Look, Virginia, 6% of their population is in the federal workforce. So it's not just the government shutdown. It probably has to do with DOGE and some of the things that came before that. There are questions around those things.
It's it's a very rare for a Republican to win in Virginia. I forget the last time McAuliffe was there, and I guess Gilmore was he Virginia? I think he was a Republican.
That I don't remember. But look, they're purple or blue states, however you want to say it. The California initiative, Prop 50, passed. New York City elected the Democrat as the mayor. Not huge surprises on these things. It would have been a big issue for the Democrats if they didn't sweep in all of these areas. People would be saying this morning what happened, particularly if one of the more centrist candidates in either New Jersey or Virginia had lost. There'd be a lot of questions about what had happened.
It's weird to gloat about Mamdani being, I think it says, what's the journal? Mamdani leads, Democrat wins. I would be uncomfortable with that as a Democrat. I wouldn't want him leading my party. He's 34 years old, never run.
Your hair stick up.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, my hair's on fire. No, coming up, markets. It rarely is.
Third quarter results just out from Wegovy maker Novo Nordisk, the Danish company lowering its full-year profit and revenue forecast. Novo's CEO citing lower growth expectations for GLP-1 treatments. Separately, the Wall Street Journal now saying the White House speaking with Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly about making some of their obesity drugs available on a proposed government-run website for $149 a month. The report says Medicare and Medicaid would cover the drugs for weight loss. A big issue for the world, frankly. But be fascinating, Joe and Becky, if in fact we're able to get these drugs at meaningfully lower prices, and then what it would do to the healthcare.
Still calling it unmet need. Still calling the obesity market unmet needs with all these drugs. I mean, it's been revolutionized in the last couple of years. And you know who's been watching, twiddling their thumbs? Albert Bourla. We still have a bunch of COVID stuff. While the stock has gone from, Pfizer needs Metsera, I think. We'll see.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting. Pfizer had a deal. They got regulatory approval and everything else. So. But Novo, which you think Novo has had some disappointing follow-on for its.
It's been Eli Lilly that's been the king of the market with all of these things. Now, there are new drugs that are out there to try and see if you can improve delivery systems, improve timing on this, lessen the effects potentially. But
this company's got 100 employees and no drugs, and we're up to $10 billion now for what people are offering for this company at this point, which just shows you how important it is to, I think, to Pfizer probably. I guess it's important to both. You love stuff like this, Sorkin. We haven't, was it Phillips 66 or kind of? We used to have great. Remember those great fights? They come back and forth. Keep raising it to where it gets into stratosphere. What people are offering for things. Maybe that's coming. Yeah, maybe that's coming.
Maybe you're having it in the media entertainment industry right now.
Yeah, except the next bid is lower. No, it's going to be. It's going to happen with Warner. Sorkin, do you know? You got your ear to the pavement? Can't you? You got nothing?
I got to put my head down for that.
You hear people running out of New York City. Help! In companies. Run!
Cheese will be next.
Coming up, the other side of today's political story. Chris Buskirk is Vice President J.D. Vance's co-founder of the Rockbridge Network. And he is, according to a new profile in the Washington Post, one of the donors that helped propel Vance to the White House. He's a new voice for us, Buskirk's tech-centric vision for this country, and how he views the 2025 election results just 1 year after President Trump's 2024 election victory.
The Republican Party and the MAGA movement now has a working class base, and if they're not excited about the candidate, they're not going to come out and vote, and that's what we saw in Virginia.
We'll be right back. And we're back. This is Squawk Pod.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Becky Quick along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Time now for a look at how the New York City mayoral election could impact wealthy people in the Big Apple. The one and only Robert Frank, who knows more about this than just about anybody else, joins us right now.
Andrew, great to see you guys have had some great discussions this morning, all about the question of wealth flight. Will the wealthy stay or go? And in fact, there are competing studies on recent wealth flight from New York. If you look at left-leaning groups, they point out that New York's population of millionaire earners, so those who earn $1 million or more in income, that has nearly doubled since 2010. There are 34,000 New Yorkers making at least $1 million or more. Now, while high earners did leave during COVID, of course, that outmigration was brief. The wealthy are now less likely to leave New York than middle-class or lower-income New Yorkers. On the other side, conservative groups argue that while New York's millionaire population has increased, the growth lags far behind other states. New York's share of national millionaires has fallen from 13 to 9% since 2010, and the city's share has fallen from 7 to 4%. California, Florida, Texas all saw gains in those millionaire shares. Now, the Citizens Budget Commission estimates that the underperformance for high earners in New York's has cost the state $11 billion in annual tax revenue, $2.5 billion for New York City. Governor Kathy Hochul says she opposes Mamdani's proposed tax increases on the wealthy New Yorkers because, quote, I don't want to lose any more people to Palm Beach. We've lost enough.
Robert, was it you we were talking about oh, sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we were talking with someone the other day, and I think it might have been Robert, about what happened to New Jersey when David Tepper left. They had to redo the budget and cut the budget as a result of one person leaving the state.
That's right. And if you look at New York, okay, it's the top 1% pay 40% of the taxes. But in the city and in the state, it's actually the top 200 pay something like 6 or 7%. And even within that group, you know, we have 152 billionaires in New York City. And so you could say, okay, the lower income folks are 4 times more likely to leave New York than the wealthy. But if you have one person who makes $1 million leave, you have to have 10 people who make $100,000 replace that person. And so that's the part where people say, well, the wealthy don't leave at the same rate as the lower income people, but they cost the tax base a lot more
I think
when
you
they
need
do
more
leave.
because the marginal rate you're not going to get.
Because it's progressive, it's even more. Now, what does have to be said is that New York has become a place for the wealthy. And for everyone else, it's incredibly difficult to live here. Right. And Joe, to your point all morning, it's the prescription for how to fix that. That's the issue. I mean, a lot of the real estate being sold in New York right now is for the wealthy that don't pay taxes here. Right. This has become a seasonal resort town for the wealthy, and for everyone else, a $3,700 median rent is getting to be unsustainable. The one other thing which we haven't talked about this morning, which I think is the most important impact from this election, is to what extent the fight between Mamdani and Trump makes New York collateral damage in that political battle. So, you know, we talked to Secretary Sean Duffy when he was here about the Gateway, the bridge project being canceled. Duffy said, this is not political. Right. They're just going through the process. Besson yesterday to Andrew made the point that, well, we could cut off their infrastructure funding.
So in addition to anything self-inflicted from having this guy as mayor, it could also cause Trump to even pile on and
100%. And that's where New York City becomes a victim. And that, I think, is the biggest economic risk to New York City from this election.
Thank you so much, Robert. We appreciate it.
The Washington Post published a profile on 1789 Capital co-founders Chris Buskirk, titled The Secretive Donor Circle That Lifted J.D. Vance is Now Rewriting MAGA's Future. The piece highlights him as a key figure behind the scenes in the MAGA movement, detailing how his organization, the Rockbridge Network, helped propel Vance into the vice presidency and continues to shape Republican strategy and policy. Joining us now on this and more is 1789 Capital Rockbridge Network co-founder Chris Buskirk. Chris, it's good to have you on.
Morning.
We've had a lot of the the people that we're talking about. We've had Orrin Cass on a couple of times, and we've had Don Jr. On, and obviously Omid Malik has been on, and the vice president. So it's a wide net. Do you have any comments about what we saw yesterday in the elections, what it portends for the midterms?
I've got a bunch of comments, probably more time than you have on the show. But I mean, my high level is that I don't think that the New York mayoral race says a whole lot about the midterms. Manhattan and the 5 boroughs obviously are unique, kind of one-to-one. So I don't know that data point tells us a whole lot, except for one thing, which is that the Democratic Party continues to go towards the radical left. I mean, his openly embracing Marxism. And while that might work in Manhattan, I'm not so sure that that works in Michigan or Wisconsin or Arizona and so forth. With regards to Virginia, candidates matter. Winsome Sears was a weak candidate. She had eschewed the president, made it very clear that she was not supportive, asked him to step aside in 2023. And that makes it really hard to turn out the Republican base and get them excited. And that's a lot of what we've learned over the years in the political work we've done, is that you have to motivate your base. The Republican Party and the MAGA movement now has a working class base. And if they're not excited about the candidate, they are not going to come out and vote. And that's what we saw in Virginia.
The overlap between differing philosophies, Chris, is apparent to me, and whenever we had Orrin Cass on, it was always apparent to me. And now, for lack of a better term, aristopopulism. Have you used that term as to what maybe?
I learned that term yesterday when I read the story. So no, it's not a term I've ever used, but it was. I wrote it down yesterday, but I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to mean.
Is it I mean, we know that about populism on the Democrat side, obviously, and we know what their ideas entail. For populism, for trying to help people. It's always been my take that progressive ideas, it's an oxymoron. They usually end up with a regressive end result. If you connect the dots, it never helps the people they're trying to help. It usually just takes us all to a lower plane. But isn't there a slippery slope when conservatives start talking about raising corporate taxes, start talking about, the worker class, I think, is helped when companies succeed using time-tested conservative free market principles, not adopting a lot of socialist principles or left-wing principles and sort of trying to dress them up as something different because you're a Republican.
Yeah, no, we're in fierce agreement on that, Joe. Look, the only way we're going to create prosperity is with an innovation economy. And that's what we do at 1789 Capital. We're very focused on investing in the best innovators, the best founders, the best companies who are moving the world forward by creating great technologies to solve some of the world's most hardest problems, and that creates broad-based prosperity. If you try and create prosperity by taxing it, you will not create any prosperity at all, and you will immiserate millions of people, as we've seen all over the world, and as I think New York is about to find out in spades.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried this so many different times. All the cliches that, rich people run out of money. They don't have enough money to spread it out evenly so that suddenly everything works the way a socialist thinks it would work. It never has succeeded. And we are trying it again here, Chris. That's what you just said. What do you expect to happen in New York City?
I expect people who can leave with any money at all and any resources to leave. And they will continue doing what they've been doing at least since 2020, probably going to Florida. I was joking with a friend last night that the Realtor of the Year for the Florida Realtors Association is likely to be the mayor-elect of New York City. And so those people will leave, and New York will probably follow the path of a lot of other once great American cities, places like Baltimore, Detroit, and so forth, and will just continue the slow decline, which has been depressing to see, but policy matters. And so, New York was just starting to come back from the COVID restrictions, and I think that this is a massive self-inflicted wound that is going to do nothing but harm the people who live in New York and who can't leave.
When I've had, what's Cass's, what is his organization? Because he has said,
Compass.
That's it, American Compass. I've asked whether the vice president really does adopt a lot of those principles wholeheartedly. And because I know that President Trump does, and I assume that probably the vice president has modified some of the. Do you, for example, which of the basic tenets of Oren Cass and American Compass do you adhere to?
Well, look, Oren came up with an index about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, which I thought was really smart. And he called it the Cost of Thriving Index, and that was an economic index that basically tried to describe what we would think of as kind of a stereotypical good middle class life entails in America. It's like, you're married, you have a couple of kids, you own a house, you own a car, you can afford health care, you can send your kids to college, et cetera. And that was something that I found really insightful when Oren did that back in maybe 2018 or 2019.
Chris, that sounds like Mamdani. And then you just say, okay, so how do we affect that for people to get there? And do you think raising corporate taxes is the way to affect that?
No, that's a way to get further and further away from that. You cannot tax your way into prosperity, right? So I thought that was
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I thought that index was actually a useful as a way of understanding what a goal is and saying, like, how do we get to a point where this is the norm, right? The last time that you could raise a family by and do what was described in the Cost of Thriving Index that Oren created, last time you could do that in this country on a single median income was 1989, and so it struck me that it is a good goal to figure out what are the preconditions politically and economically in order to get to that point where the kind of stereotypical post-World War II middle American life was achievable on a single median income. The answer I have for that is not taxation, emphatically not taxation. It is innovation. It is how do we create new technologies that solve problems, that increase productivity and therefore increase prosperity, which will proliferate throughout the country and throughout the American citizenry, regardless of their socioeconomic status at the beginning.
Like, people would say that sounds like a supply side trickle down. And I've said, hey, look, supply side trickle down is all we got. You grow the pie and you hope for the best and do things to grease it, to try to spread it out the best you can. But certainly shrinking the pie with policies that are counterproductive has never helped anyone. But what you have just done is condensed exactly what we're talking about. Mamdani could have had the same index and said, look, it's been since 1989 since people were able to afford living in New York City. And then on the other side, Oren Cass has also, identified that issue. But the way to get there is bipolar or polar opposites. The way to affect what you want.
You can't do it by taking things from people. You have to do it by increasing the amount of things that are being made. It's the point you just made, Joe, which is increase the size of the pie. And since the first industrial revolution, the middle of the 18th century, the way we've been doing it is by creating new technologies that make people able to do more with less, and that increases prosperity.
Chris, who's going to be? Is J.D. Vance going to be the next nominee in your view?
Well, I say a little prayer every single night that he will be. So, yeah, I sure hope so.
How is 1789? How is it good investments and patriotic? How do those things go together? Is that a real thing?
Yeah, it is a real thing, because the best thing that we can do as investors is to increase the prosperity of the country. And as you know, the drum I'm going to be beating from now probably until the day I die is how do we increase prosperity by building new things? And that's what we're investing in. We're investing in the entire AI stack, whether it be energy, chips, models. We're investing in energy, space, defense tech, et cetera. We got to push things forward. We got to grow that pie, and that means giving capital to the best founders out there.
For the whole first part of the interview, I didn't order it, but it said at the bottom, secretive donor. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it sounded like, almost like reminded me of Casablanca. Do you leave at midnight to go to these meetings and stuff, and look behind you to make sure no one's following you? Anyway, come back. I want to talk about more about that and all the secrets and all these other people sneaking around. Thank you.
Still to come on Squawk Pod, one of the sure-to-be highest-profile cases in front of the Supreme Court this term, the legality of the president's tariff policies, whether he has the power to regulate levies that are typically congressional business. Eamon Javers lays out the case.
What the administration is saying is, look, the president deserves a lot of deference here because this is national security, because this is foreign policy. Those things are the president's remit.
You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC. Here's Joe Kernen.
Stand by, Joe. His mic. Cue.
Well, on top of everything else, it's just one thing after another, isn't it? Now the Supreme Court's going to hear a challenge to President Trump's tariff policy. And Eamon Javers, you can also look at this on Polymarket. Joins us now with more on the case. I think only 35% chance of the president prevailing with this tariff case. I don't know whether that's accurate or not. But money, yesterday we saw it, Eamon. There were people betting $2 million on Mamdani to make $100,000. No, it wasn't, though. Was it?
Really? It's not if it's a sure thing, but that is
it was a sure thing.
That's a huge risk to take for a relatively small
But that shows why, Eamon, instead of polls, if you plunk down a couple $1 million, you probably have a pretty good idea what's gonna happen. Yeah. Now I'm thinking I believe
I saw, Joe, yesterday?
Yeah.
I saw people online, somebody tweeted this at me, people online are betting during the White House press briefing on the next word that Caroline Leavitt will say. And one guy had bet $700 that the next word was going to be China, and I asked her a question about China, and he was like celebrating online and tweeting it out.
Asked him a question about China because
he was live streaming himself betting.
You asked her a question.
No, I didn't, but this opens up a whole new revenue stream for me, right?
Oh man! Don't even joke about that. I mean, there was an earnings call the other night where they had
shaving in the briefing room.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of ridiculous the things you can place money on at this point. Forget about free throws in the NBA. Trying to get a CEO to say something in an earnings call. I forget which CEO said something maybe it was Coinbase. Somebody said something the other day and ticked off the last answer that he gave was every single word that there was a bet on him, whether or not he would say it on the earnings call. Just used a sentence and used every one of those things. It's insane.
I personally,
and we have reached crazy places.
Yeah, I personally think people need a new hobby. But let's talk about the Supreme Court, which is why I'm here this morning. So look, it is going to be an enormously high stakes day at the Supreme Court today, as you guys were just saying. President Trump says he's not going to attend today's oral arguments after all, but Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is expected to be seated in the front row today. And President Trump says he believes this is going to be one of the most important decisions ever made by the Supreme Court. Now, a very large part of the tariffs that the president has enacted this year are on the line in this decision. The Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court, where, remember, Trump has appointed 3 of 9 members, to reverse a ruling from a lower court that found that most of the tariffs are an illegal use of the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. Trump has used that law to impose what he called his fentanyl tariffs, his Liberation Day tariffs earlier this year. An estimated $90 billion in tariff revenue hangs on the high court's ruling here. Treasury has said it most likely would have to send that money back this year if the Trump administration is to lose this case. Now remember, the Constitution gives the power to impose tariffs and taxes to Congress. No president before Trump has used this 1977 law to put tariffs in place, but the law does allow a president to, quote, regulate imports of property owned by a foreign country or foreign national. Now, the White House says that's enough to allow these tariffs, but the businesses that are suing the administration argue that the power to regulate is not the same as the power to tax, and therefore the tariffs should be struck down. We'll see what the court has to say about all this at about 10 a.m. this morning. And by the way, guys, the companies that are suing the administration here, not the big global conglomerates that you might expect. The 2 initial cases were brought by smaller firms, including 2 toy manufacturers, a New York wine importer, and a woman's apparel company. Back over to you guys.
Yeah, Eamon, that's because the big companies can go to the White House and try and negotiate and, lobby for themselves. The small companies are the ones that have no recourse.
Yeah, I think you're seeing a decision by big companies that confronting this administration is not a good use of their resources, right? I mean, they may object to these tariffs, but adopting a confrontational posture with Donald Trump is not really good for their business because they can be singled out and targeted. These smaller businesses, though, it is existential for them, and they're less likely to be targeted by the president. The president's less likely to go after, a woman's cycling apparel company or an educational toy company or something like that that's super small, just because the optics of that are not great. So I think it's a tactical decision by the big companies to stay out of this, but I can tell you a lot of them are quietly rooting it along.
Is there any way it's a split decision? I mean, because I was thinking yesterday, in fact, I asked the Treasury Secretary, the emergency uses for, I don't know, trade deficit, how did that suddenly get so bad it was an emergency? But the rare earth materials and metals, that seems to constitute what could be construed as an emergency. If someone hits you with that and your entire, everything that we do, we need that stuff. Couldn't that be said, oh, yeah, you're right there, that is an emergency. Yeah, not so much on maybe on the, on the trade imbalance side of things. How would they rule?
Yeah. Well, I think the Treasury Secretary pointed this out to you guys yesterday, saying that he thinks that they do have alternatives. They have some backup authorities that they could use here. But the trick is that those authorities are more cumbersome, was what he said yesterday. That's because they require a long investigation, a whole process. What Trump has been doing this year is pretty much unilaterally imposing these tariffs essentially on a whim.
How could the Supreme Court ruling take into account that there are different, that the tariffs against China because of the rare earth, that is an emergency and that can stand? Yeah. Other tariffs cannot stand. Could it be a split ruling that way? That's what I was asking. Not what the
It absolutely could be, and that's what the administration is arguing, to get the court to decide with them across the board on these so-called IEEPA tariffs. What the administration is saying is, look, the president deserves a lot of deference here because this is national security, because this is foreign policy. Those things are the president's remit, not Congress necessarily. So we really need this authority because of the way the president's using it to engage in foreign policy.
Rare earths came along afterwards. The initial reason that they cited for the emergency was fentanyl.
Right. But, you could use any emergency you want as long as the court buys that argument.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Eamon. Becky, thank you. We all thank you.
And that is Squawk Pod for today. Thank you, as always, for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern to get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears. Please follow Squawk Pod wherever you like to get your podcasts. Have a great Wednesday. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.